What if everything you're certain about isn't certain at all? What if maybe just one word held the key to reducing your stress, freeing your mind, and expanding your life? Today, we welcome back Allison Carmen, uncertainty expert and author of The Gift of Maybe. In a world that feels increasingly unpredictable, this conversation might be the breath of hope you need. Welcome to Make It a Great One with Dr. Dan. I'm Dan Peters, psychologist and leadership coach. This show is all about bringing hope, connection, awareness, and wisdom through meaningful conversations that inspire us to become better versions of ourselves and have a positive impact on humanity. This is your space to pause, reflect, and reconnect with who you are, what you care about, and who you want to be. We have this moment, this day, and this life. Let's make it a great one. Today's show is Maybe, how one word can change everything in your life with Allison Carmen. Allison is a business consultant and coach, life strategist, TEDx speaker, uncertainty expert, and author of The Gift of Maybe, offering hope and possibility in uncertain times. She's been named an architect of change by Maria Shriver, and the idea of maybe has been included in Oprah's new and expanded Dictionary of Enlightenment. Allison hosts her own podcast, 10 Minutes to Less Suffering, that focuses on helping people reduce their stress and worry. She's also the CFO, General Counsel, and Chief Business Operator of the Motherhood Center. Allison, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, I couldn't believe this, but I went back to listen to our last conversation, which was 8 years ago. So much has happened in our micro lives and our macro world. And at the very end of the show, I said, maybe we will get to do this again. And here we are. I wasn't even going to listen to the other show. And I'm like, I got this far. I might as well just listen. And then I'm like, well, look at that. See, the gift of maybe, it covers lots of ground.
Yeah, because we're always living in the unknown. We pretend that we're not, but everything is uncertain other than the moment that we're in.
Everything. I know you have told this story a lot. I've heard you tell your story, and I know that is just a microcosm of the amounts of times that you share your story. But the origin story is the power behind what came to you. And so tell everyone a little bit about your addiction to certainty and your recovery.
Sure. Well, I always say that I was addicted to certainty. If I didn't know what was going to happen next, I predicted things were going to be bad or they weren't going to work out. And that's how I lived most of my life. If I didn't know, that means the future was bad. And I just could not get a hold of my stress, my anxiety, my worry. And so, what I did in order to manage that is I would write stories to feel safe. When I grow up, I'm going to get a job as a lawyer, I'm going to make a lot of money, I'm going to marry this great guy, and then I'll have certainty. So, either I was in this mess of being addicted and stressed and worried, or I was holding on to that story. And a lot of us do that. We're always kind of managing, the story of this will happen and I'll be okay, or I will never be able to have the life that I want. And so the day arrived. I was walking to work and I was like, wow, I finally got certainty in my life after all the stress and worry. I married the great guy who I thought was great at the time. I became a lawyer. I have this great job. And now certainty is mine. And sure enough, finally.
Yeah.
And I really believe that, so now I don't know if I should feel embarrassed about that thought, but I really believe that the day had arrived, because a lot of us think that if I just get that job, if my child just gets in, I'm going to have the certainty, no more worry, and peace will be mine, right? It's always the outer is going to give us that inner sense of certainty. And sure enough, the second day of work, they came into the office and they're like, we're firing half of the first years, and I was a first year. And in that moment, I realized I was late in the game, but I realized in that moment that I would never have certainty because I lived so long thinking this is the moment. And the minute I got there, it was taken from me. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of us have had those experiences, right? Where you think it's the moment, and then the next moment, something else happens or that thing is taken.
Totally. So you say you're late in the game. I'm going to push back. You were late to the game. I'm going to push back. How old were you when you had that epiphany?
I was, well, you're going to laugh. I was 25 at the time. So,
Yes.
yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
So, no, not laughing. Actually, it's just important for everyone to hear, for any of us to get to that level of awareness at any age in life is a blessing, because most don't. And even those of us who have our glimpses, and we're going to talk about, you speak about this, you live it. We all know to be human is, even if we're an expert in any craft or any idea, we still are human and fall back into the human tendency.
absolutely. And sometimes you reach a point and you don't realize there's another point to get to. So it's not even a
Mm-hmm.
fall back. It's an expansion of the next moment or the next level of what the current consciousness means. So
Mm-hmm.
that's been interesting as well for me. But going back to the origin story, so I didn't lose my job, but I cracked open to the fact that life was uncertain and I had no
Mm-hmm.
tools to deal with this addiction. So I
Mm-hmm.
started eating vegan food. I started meditating. I started going to every healer, and it was helpful. But the source fear was uncertainty. So I would feel better, and then something uncertain would happen, and the loop would start again. Things are bad. They're never going to get better. What does this mean? How will I be okay? And then one day, in my search for peace, I took up qigong, and my
Mm-hmm.
Taoist teacher told me this story that changed my life. And maybe some of your listeners have heard it before. I know you have, but it's a
Yeah,
story.
let's do it. It's a great. It's you cannot hear this story enough.
Yeah. And it's even now when I tell it, I actually feel a sense of peace within me because
Mm-hmm.
we always forget that we don't know. And there's such a gorgeous beauty in that. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
Taoist story. And if you ask a Taoist person, I'm going to tell the story, it means things are neither good or bad. But for me, I had a different interpretation of the story. And it goes like this: there's a farmer and he has a horse, and his horse runs away. And his neighbor comes by and says, "You have the worst luck." And the farmer says, "Maybe." The next day, the horse comes back with 5 mares. The neighbor comes by to the farmer and says, "You have the best luck." And the farmer says, "Maybe." The next day, the farmer's son is on the horse. He falls off and breaks his leg. The neighbor comes by to the farmer and says, "You have the worst luck." The farmer says, "Maybe." The next day, the army comes to take the farmer's son to war. They can't take him because his leg is broken. And the neighbor comes by to the farmer and says, "You have the best luck." And the farmer says, "Maybe." Now, again, in the Taoist tradition, it means things are neither good or bad. But for me, when I heard that story, I actually felt a pop in my chest. My whole life, I was always thinking the horse ran away. I'm doomed. Things are horrible. It never occurred to me that the horse could come back. And so when I went
Mm-hmm.
home that day, the negative thoughts came up. I don't have enough clients. Things aren't good. And I would just say, maybe that thought's not true. And maybe
Mm-hmm.
things are the way they're supposed to be. And maybe you'll get another client tomorrow. It sounds so simple, but when you start to question the absolute nature of your fear and your worry, and you
Mm-hmm.
realize uncertainty is a playing field of infinite possibilities. Sure, there's the maybe not, but there's also this aspect of uncertainty where there's a maybe and it has potential, it has miracles, it has glory. But when we don't know, we make it our enemy. And in that day, that
Totally.
moment, not
Totally.
knowing became my best friend, because if I wanted my life to change, it had to happen in the unknown. And through good
Mm-hmm.
times, through bad times, if you know life has maybe, you're always flexible. You could have hope, but not be rigid. You could dream and know it could happen many different ways. And you kind of know you're always on an infinite playing field. You're never down and out. But
Mm-hmm.
and what's so interesting about the story is that at first it became my life tool. And I was out there and I was teaching and I was the uncertainty girl. People were coming to me and I was just living this life. But I had corners of my life that I still was addicted, but you don't see it. That's the
Mm-hmm.
beauty of life, right? You think that
Yes.
you're on this open playing field and then life comes back your way again. It's like there's more to do because maybe it becomes, if you really, really live in it, it becomes a life perspective, a way of
Mm-hmm.
thinking. You're able to experience like present based mind thinking if you're not afraid of the unknown. And just the
Yeah.
other story was, so I feel that I am an uncertainty expert. And about 6 years ago, my husband came home and out of nowhere broke up our marriage. And of course, you're going to be devastated. I was devastated. I was grieving. But in that moment, while that's happening, I had certainty. I was living in a place where I thought my marriage was certain. It
Mm-hmm.
never occurred to me. There were certain things in my life that I was living in a way that they were certain. And
Mm-hmm.
anytime you think anything's certain, you don't care for it the same way, you don't deal with it the same way, and you don't live your best life because you're choosing certainty over your path. And
Mm.
it was
That
maybe that saved me. So it's amazing how it just keeps coming around. It wasn't that
keeps coming around. Yeah.
it wasn't devastating, but while it was happening in the middle of my devastation, I knew that uncertainty was my best friend and that life
Mm-hmm.
could change. Maybe. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know, but you give somebody a little maybe and it's like breath in darkness. So
It
that's
makes
the
me,
story.
yeah. That so there's the origin story, and then there is the sequel that
Yes.
that came
Yes.
out,
Yeah.
really, which is, and as you say, like this is a constant process for us. You're making me think of how much we take things for granted is another way of, right, certainty and, oh, this will always be here. I'll always have this.
That's right.
They'll always show up for me, or
Mhm.
none of it is certain. And as humans, we are these meaning making machines,
Yeah.
and I think it was Freud that basically said that, all of our unconscious and all of our psyche is all there just to deal with and ward off the ultimate fear of death. Like
Oh,
all everything is about to ward off
yeah.
reality that we, for whatever reason, have such a tough time. I'm sure it's there's some evolutionary aspects to this, that we have such a tough time thinking about impermanence, thinking about things being different.
Yeah.
And to your point, so then we hold on to them as if we need them to be the same all the time as it is, or get this thing that we think is just going to make it all okay.
Yes.
And I know, as someone who has my own experiences with this,
Mhm.
there is the moment, that moment of where we
Yeah.
feel that peace and calm, and then the moment is shattered. And I remember being in middle school,
Yeah.
going through my, what I now know was a list of worries, didn't know it was really then,
Yeah.
of my checkbox.
Yeah.
Okay, there was this thing I need to worry about, check.
Yeah.
This thing I need to worry about, check. This thing, and there was, I remember there'd be like 7 or 8,
Yeah.
and I remember I get to the bottom, I was check, and I remember this, such a sigh of relief as I was getting ready to go to bed, and then it was, but wait, what if dot 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 dot, and so none of
Yeah.
this is permanent.
None of
It's like
and
yeah, yeah.
it steals our happiness, it steals our joy, and it makes us almost messy in the moment. Like we're if we could let tomorrow go, and if we could, we're always fighting with our feeling of okayness and safety. And then we're not present based. We're not where we could really be in life.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
what's also interesting is that this idea of maybe has actually helped me think about death and all those things we fear because it's just like another unknown, right? And
Mm-hmm.
again, if uncertainty is not bad, and I know this is not, I don't want to get too far into this, but if what we don't know is not necessarily bad,
Right.
right? There's
Right.
hope in everything. We
Right.
make uncertainty our enemy, but the unknown really is the place where every possibility blossoms. So it's
Right.
made me less fearful in every aspect, including the unknowable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
when you start to see the unknowable is gorgeous and it's filled with so many things we can't even imagine, then maybe
Right.
maybe
Right.
there's
Uh,
more. Maybe it's okay. You know what I'm saying? It's just a
maybe. Right.
maybe.
A real time example. Before we hopped on, I was just in the other room and talking to um, our office administrator, and a client called in very upset, wanting to schedule an appointment with me because he had just lost his job and
Mhm.
he's devastated. And here's the thing, it's so interesting. He's in obviously that shock.
Right.
He hates his job.
Mhm.
And so the first thought is this devastation, what's going to happen with
Right.
my life, my family, but nowhere, and this is where the coaching comes in, of course,
Right.
is the maybe the better job is coming. Maybe
Right.
your life is about to get better, but we don't default. Most of us don't default to that.
Right. And the problem when you don't default to it, sometimes people give up too soon. The minute they
Mhm.
can't see it, it's not happening. The minute they can't see it, they stop trying. The minute they can't see it, they don't believe that life could change. Everything is based on our current state, right? So if this is somebody that could dig deep and say, okay, yeah, maybe he's more likely to be open. He's more likely to be creative. He's more likely to be in a receptive mode. He's more likely not to slip into massive anxiety or depression. Everything is
Mhm.
more likely. And it is
Mhm.
literally just a perspective. But if you were to tell him right now, I'm going to guarantee you that you're going to get a job and it's going to be great because you knew, his suffering would stop. So if you think about it, his suffering really is about his relationship with uncertainty. It's
Mhm.
not because we know he didn't like the job. And again, not
Right.
minimizing, you have
Right.
bills to pay. But if you told him in 2 months for sure, the suffering would end, which means the suffering is not about what's really going to happen. The suffering is about our
Mhm.
inability to sit with the unknown and think that things are still possible.
It's really hard. I mean, this conversation was very timely for me. I mean, I have had your book on my bookshelf for 8 years. I read your book. I know the content. I've been
Yeah,
aware of what you've been doing.
yeah,
I counsel and coach people for a living. And yet, 2 days ago, I was dealing with an uncertain situation that was causing me a lot of stress, work related, professionally related.
yeah,
And I started spinning, and I started going to all of the future tripping and all of these narratives,
yeah,
which none of them were exciting, right? They were
yeah,
all the negative, the worry. And all of a sudden I'm like, hello. And I just applied. This is true. I applied the maybe and
yeah,
started maybeing all of the things that I was worrying about. And you described the pop in your chest. I definitely
yeah,
feel my stuff in my chest. And
yeah,
it was just like a whoosh. It
yeah,
wasn't a pop, but it was like a whoosh of,
yeah,
oh, oh. And this goes into this whatever dimension that we perceive life in, we are stuck with our own stories and our own perceptions. And what the maybe does is open up the possibilities for
that's
all of
right.
the things that we can't even fathom that are out there that might be coming to us.
Yeah. Yeah, we're so sure our story is true. We are
Hmm.
so sure that we are justified. We are so it's like we hold on to it to with everything we have. But the minute you question that, for some reason, why are our fears absolute? Because they're in the future. Isn't that
Hmm.
amazing? Like
Yeah.
we make our thoughts absolute about what will be that hasn't happened yet. And so when you question them with the maybe, that's what's so beautiful. All you have to do is say, what's my greatest fear? I'm afraid my business situation won't work out. I'm afraid things are bad. Whatever it is. And you say, are you absolutely certain that fear is true? Are you absolutely certain that thought's true? No, you can't be certain of anything. And then you maybe it out. And the more maybes you give yourself, the more space. Even if your fear exists, you start to realize, wait, there are other possibilities. And then hope comes in, breath comes in, and then your relationship with the unknown just starts to shift. And
Hmm.
I find that people who live in maybe develop faith. and they don't develop a
I was
religious
going to
faith.
ask you about faith. Yeah, I was going to ask you how faith fits.
Yeah, it's not a religious. It's funny. I
Right.
used to call maybe cognitive faith. And then
Mm,
I had a Taoist teacher confront me, and it's like, faith is faith. If you get to faith through maybe, and you're able to be in uncertainty and know that there's a flow to life, know that there's an infinite playing field, know that you can't know, and know that good things could happen too. And if you're living in that place, you're in a place of faith. So if you got there through maybe, I don't care. That's what a Taoist would say. But I used to
hmm
call it cognitive faith. But I find people who start to live in maybe, they develop it because if you think about it, we're always resisting life. We're always
hmm
saying this shouldn't be happening. If this happens, then that happens. We're in a state of resistance. But the
hmm
minute you kind of shift into a place of uncertainty is my best friend, this is what is. I'm not in resistance. I know that life can change. I know there's an infinite playing field and I'm okay with uncertainty. You are in a place of faith. Because if you think about it,
hmm
faith is I'm not always in control. I have to let go. I can only do my best. And the maybe is part of that. So for me, I think I've developed faith in areas. Like I'm still, like you said before, I'm still not perfect. Like I have days where like my children could challenge me because I have an
hmm
attachment that I can't let go of. There are certain things I can detach. I mean, maybe I'm open. There are certain things that I declare I need in this lifetime. And those are places where I have to work because is it my attachment? Is it my relationship with uncertainty? You're always balancing things. But there are areas where
hmm
I have developed faith and I'm just okay. And I
I
know
like
things
the,
will change.
yeah, I like the expansion of beyond cognitive, cognitive maybe. I understand why you would go there because
Yeah.
it is a thinking approach, right? And we know how
Mhm.
cognitive behavioral therapy and so many others
Right.
that have since come from that are very powerful. And we
Yeah.
also know that that's just part of our pie. And so,
Yeah.
as you talk about the pop in your chest, and as I am always holding that same place, which is, of course, right next to the heart,
Yeah.
um, we're fully integrated, and our bodies feel all of this.
Absolutely.
And so it is
Absolutely.
a whole. I like this idea of to really step in to the mindset of maybe and the gift of maybe fully step into this. This isn't just a cognitive exercise.
Yeah.
It's the beginning because you have to go there with your thought, but then you have to really believe.
Yeah, it becomes heart-based, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden you're in this stressful moment. I lost my job, life is bad. My husband left me, life's never going to get better. I have this story running that I can never have the life that I want. I'm fearful, I'm stressed. And all of a sudden, I remember that life has maybe. And I realize that I have more possibilities. So all of a sudden, my mind starts to calm down because I know that more is possible that I can imagine in the moment. So I become more present. So now I'm more present and I'm more in my heart, right? So I
hmm
went from my mind to my heart. Now I have a little more faith. I have a little more letting go. I have a little more openness, a little more creativity. So you're right. It's a bridge. It's
hmm
another bridge to get us to this place where we're
hmm
not in resistance, we're open, we're present, and life is not our enemy. That's the thing. When uncertainty is not your
mm
enemy, life is not your enemy. And then we could be hopeful. Hope is a very funny thing. People make it like hopeful people are weak, they don't know what they're talking about. But to have hope is to say, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to get up today and I'm going to try again.
hmm
And
Yeah.
despair really is the addiction to certainty. When we hear all these people saying we're doomed, things can never get better, it's very easy to sit in despair. It's much more challenging to sit in hope.
Oh,
And
yes.
yeah,
Yes. Well, yeah, that's is really interesting. It seems it's easier to sit in despair, but it's terrible, right?
absolutely.
It's harder. Well, it takes for many more conscious, mindful, intentional practice to sit in hope. However, hope what hope springs eternal, right? Like
Yeah.
there is no end to what is possible with hope. Despair, we go into a shell, or we stay into bed, or we're in a dark room, literally
Mhm.
or figuratively, and our lenses and our perspectives, they just kind of like horse
Yeah.
blinders, they just
Yeah.
come in. And we actually know, some of the earlier theories of depression and anxiety from a cognitive perspective were that when someone is depressed and anxious, they actually are focusing so much on themselves
Yeah.
that they can't broaden they can't see the worldview to see all
Yeah.
the other data points about what else is out there. So the gift of maybe, the maybe mindset, is about expanding our view, expanding possibility,
Right. But
expanding
yes.
the future.
Yeah. And it's hope without attachment, right? Because you
Hmm.
could be hopeful and that could be painful too if life has to be one way. And that's what's so
Hmm.
great about maybe is that you get to live in this place and it doesn't have to be one way. That's the thing. We get
Hmm.
stuck. You could say, "Oh, that person's hopeful and they believe that they're gonna get that one job tomorrow." We have to be
Hmm.
careful too, right? We could say, "Oh, I'm okay. I'm open. I think this can still happen." But the
Hmm.
one thing happening is also the invitation to pain. So maybe allows this thing to happen or it could happen this way. I am so surprised every day. Like sometimes I don't even bother to think it out all the way anymore. I think about my
Hmm.
intention, I think about my desire, I act, and then I let it happen because I don't
Hmm.
know. Right? And
Hmm.
I allow it because sometimes we say, "Oh, I'm going to do this and I know it'll be good. I know." And then a month later it leads to something else. So sometimes I just save
Right.
myself the energy of the story. I just know it's like I'm very heart-based. I know the reason why I'm doing it, and I let the rest of it unfold. I could have a hope or a dream, but I allow it to be the way it is.
Would you say this is a type of surrendering? Not like surrendering in fetal position on the floor,
Right.
but surrendering to the larger
Yes.
intelligence of the universe.
Yes, because you're giving up the story. If you think about it, the story is we're not safe, we're not okay,
Hmm.
or this is how my life should be, or this is never going to get better. And with maybe you recognize that you don't know and you're okay with not knowing. And yeah, it is a surrender because you make peace with the unknown again is our best friend because we want our
Hmm.
life to change. It has to happen there. So in a way, you're partnering with life. But there is a beginning
Yeah.
piece. It's funny. It's the non-resistance to the moment also is part of it. And sometimes I get to the non-resistant through the maybe. Sometimes I'll
Hmm.
do the maybe practice, and that'll be the reason why I could sit in the moment and not resist what is. And sometimes
Hmm.
I'll just be, it is what it is, and then I'll start doing the maybe practice. So at the end of the day, you end up in a place of
Hmm.
surrender and more presence.
Hmm.
And then
You
also
know,
more
y- y-
gratitude. Yeah.
more gratitude. Yes. Okay. I want to hit gratitude. And I need to go with my thoughts so I don't forget it. So we're putting gratitude out there.
Okay.
Um, we both work with business people and leaders and executives, and what's so interesting about this, and I'm interested in your experience, is so much of the time people in these positions, it's about goals, it's about metrics, it's about outcomes, right? Like it's
Yeah.
in some cases, very many cases, very high stakes. Um, Money, boards, stakeholders, all
Yeah.
of the stuff that we all know. And yet the secret is to to accept the maybe, to accept the uncertainty. Leaders are actually more agile when many people think, no, 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 like, what are you talking about? Like,
Yeah.
we need certainty. We
Yeah.
need certainty for this, but it's actually the opposite.
It's so true. And what's so interesting about what you just brought up is that when I found maybe it was my private practice. There was never another soul that was going to know my internal letting go practice. And then the 2008 crash happened. And I was doing just business consulting.
Mm,
And it was such an interesting moment because you couldn't know anything. Nobody could get a loan. Nobody had sales. Everything was upside down.
mm-hmm,
And and everybody was just trying to go back to the way they were doing business, but you just couldn't. And so I'd go to client to client to client, and no matter what I did with the financial statements and the market, I couldn't help them. And finally, I was sitting in this guy's office. He hadn't paid rent in 3 months. He was losing his apartment, and I think I just let go, and I told him the farmer's story. I was literally, I didn't know what to do. And that was the moment that changed. That's
Mm-hmm.
why I brought Maybe into business, because he needed a way to be uncertain. He needed a
Mm-hmm.
way to sit back and say, no matter how this looks, maybe there's another way. Maybe there's a
Mm-hmm.
new way to do business. And within 2 weeks, his entire life changed. He closed his store. He went online. He started a friend. It was I never, maybe I was supposed to see this in order to bring it in, but it was the relationship with the uncertainty that really
Mm-hmm.
changed
Yeah.
everybody I worked with in 2008. And you're right,
Mm-hmm.
because business is really about living in the unknown. If you're really an entrepreneur, if you're really a visionary, you have to allow those moments of new things, of not knowing, of innovation to happen. You have to allow
Mm-hmm.
new ideas. And sometimes the financial statement does not reflect what's possible. I mean, you have to
Mm-hmm.
look at it. There is a grounding. Look, I'm also a CFO. There's a grounding in the number, but
Right.
that's not where the miracle lies. So you
Mm-hmm.
look at the number, and then the
Mm-hmm.
number kind of tells you where you stand in the moment, but it doesn't tell you where you're going.
Yeah.
And so when you're able, it's all about, sometimes I think I forget the name of it, but it's the Rumson thing where they have, that matrix of uncertainty and certainty, the unknown
Oh,
and
right.
the known,
Right. Right.
right?
Right. Right.
Right? And it from, I think I did a podcast on this a while ago, but really the unknown, though, that's where a visionary hangs out. And you gotta,
Yes, I like that.
yeah,
Unknown is where visionary. Yeah, that's where the
yeah,
visionaries live.
they're
Yeah.
they don't mind it. They
Mm-hmm.
don't mind it. That's where
Mm-hmm.
greatness lies. It's like you're able to ground in today, but at the same time, dream of what could be. And
Mm-hmm.
then to me, grounding in what is and dreaming what could be, the maybe for me is the line that allows
Right.
me and the people I work with to get there.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So okay, great. Um two things that are you're triggering for me. One, the 2008, the crash. I remember two friends, different couples, and after 1 or 2 years of the awful balloon payments and all of the houses being turned
Yeah.
upside down, they both in both situations they both ended up losing their homes.
Mhm.
And I remember for one, this is devastating. I don't think we're ever going to recover. The other mindset was, we are so relieved to be done with all the
Yeah.
banks, the creditors, figuring out how to pay off this thing that we're never going to get our investment back anyways. And it's so
Right.
refreshing to go start over and downsize.
Yeah.
Same situation. And this is no judgment to either of them, because those
Yeah.
were some really tough things that happened. But it's
Yeah.
just so interesting about about that mindset, about
Right.
that mindset.
Yeah.
And the other quick thing is, I'm reading this great book that you might know and many people know, Inner Excellence, about performance. And one of the many great statements in this book is coaching high performance Olympic professional athletes, talking about the competition. His point is, you don't know if you're supposed to win. You're supposed to compete the best you can, but you don't know if it's better for you, or
Yeah.
better for you to win or better for you to lose. That's something that unfolds much, much later. And
Absolutely.
it's so very similar to this, what we're
Yes.
talking about,
It's
right?
the story we tell. It's the
Yeah.
resistance. My life shouldn't be this way in this moment. And
Hmm.
then what's so interesting is then that we play from that story, not from the unlimited playing field. If you're playing from the story that my life shouldn't be like this, or I can never have the life that I want, then what choices are you going to make? Not the one that most aligns with your path, not the one that most aligns with your heart, because it's based on something that's not aligning with life in the moment. And
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
sometimes it's hard to see that because we kind of confuse disappointment or hurt or something we don't like with how life should be. We don't
Mhm.
realize that we could not like something, but it doesn't mean we're not aligned with what's supposed to be happening in the moment. And it doesn't mean we're not learning something, and it doesn't mean we can't still achieve our goals. So I think we conflate everything. And then
Mhm.
unfortunately, because we're always looking to be okay, we're
Yeah.
conflating. We want to feel okay, and then we're confused about what's really happening, and often we don't pursue our true life's path, right? So
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
it all comes down to uncertainty and certainty, letting go, surrendering, and faith,
Mhm.
right?
And
Faith
faith.
in the process.
Well, and gratitude, because go back to
Gratitude.
gratitude. So what were your thoughts about where gratitude fits in?
Well, what's so interesting is that when we're in resistance, when we say this shouldn't be happening, or when we're worried and we're believing we can't have the life that we want, or we think what we have is certain, we're not in that sacred space where we're really present to enjoy and appreciate the life that we're in. And it's so crazy that one of the worst things that's ever happened to me in my life happened when my husband left me. And yet it was like after that happened, even though I was grieving, I was so present that everything became so precious. So
Hmm.
I'm going through this time where I'm devastated. And at the same time, I was so present and I was so awakened to the moment that the preciousness started to seep in. So it was really interesting, right? And then a gratitude practice developed at that time in my life that I still have today.
Hmm.
So all of these practices, they allow us to enjoy where we are and to know that nothing's certain. You could either be afraid of it or you could just enjoy it on such a deep, gorgeous level. Again, our
Hmm.
choice, right?
Yeah, and easy to say, harder to do. And
Yeah.
I think let's emphasize the cultivation that is, when I say cultivation, not years of cultivation, but like in the day, in the moment, over those next months, if we're dealing with something really difficult like loss,
Yeah.
the end of something,
Yeah.
you have to be very purposeful in the toughest moments until you can get some space from it. Was that your experience?
Oh, you have to feel your feelings. You cannot skip. Even if you're in maybe, even if you're in gratitude, your heart, a broken heart is a broken heart. Like
Hmm.
disappointment is disappointment. Hurt is hurt. And you have to allow yourself to feel and process those feelings. But what we forget is even while those things are going on, sometimes the moment is offering you something. Sometimes the glimmers come and go. Sometimes you
Hmm.
could be hopeful and be in pain at the same time. You could be in
Hmm.
maybe in pain. Like, yes, it was a process that had many different elements to it.
Hmm.
And even today, I cannot believe the gorgeous life I have today. There are still things from that experience that could come up out of nowhere. And you have to honor that always. You have to, like,
Hmm.
we're not supposed to be in this high joyous state all the time, although that's what I would like. There are experiences, right, that run
Right.
through us, and you know that. And
Hmm.
but yes,
Hmm.
we have to process and honor wherever we are in the moment and use these tools. And I believe what's so great about maybe is always there when you're ready. So I always
Hmm.
allow myself to have the experience, and then I know life has maybe. And when I'm ready, it cracks open the window and it lets some air in. And then the flow happens, the process happens, and all of a sudden there I am again. I know that uncertainty is going to bring new things into my life,
Hmm.
even if
Hmm.
I'm feeling pain. I say that you don't have to move on to move forward.
Mm.
Do you know what I'm saying? So, like,
Yeah.
I maybe allowed me to move forward even though I hadn't moved on. Like I was
Hmm.
still processing my pain, but I believed in the unlimited field. So I
Mm.
got up and I went to work. In pain, I went to work.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
I like the unlimited field. I'm glad you said that. Right. To
yeah,
think about it is unlimited, whether regardless of which vantage point we're looking, whether we're looking from physics, metaphysics, like there's just so much out there that is unlimited,
Yeah.
and to have some degree of faith in the not knowing as a positive thing. And um, something that you reminded me of what my coach has shared with me over time is, instead of thinking about um, this is happening to me, how about this is happening for me? Like, again, that whole idea that, yeah, we don't like hard things, but it's the hardest things that define us. It's the hardest things in life that make us who we are. Trophies don't make us who we are. Trophies feel nice for a moment. We generally don't grow so much for them. We
Yeah.
grow from the hard things. So life continues to give us things
Yeah.
for us, is a way of looking at it.
You know, it's funny. I'm willing to say that for myself, but I'm not willing to say that for another, because I know
Mm-hmm.
that people have experiences in their lives that I can't explain, that I don't know why certain things happen to certain people. So I always say, um, either the best is always happening or we need to make the best of it. Either way,
Mm.
here we are. That's how I like to say it, because
I
like,
like that.
yeah, because sometimes, you'll meet someone who lost a child, or a spouse died early, or they have a disability, and I can say to them, and it could be life. Maybe the premise is life is always happening for them, but I don't want to discount their experience. So I always say,
Yes.
whether the best is always happening or you have to make the best of it, here we are. And that's actually how I dealt with my ex leaving for a long time, because people would come and they'd say, "Oh, look, you're so successful. It's so great he left." And I'd be like, "Oh," like it would catch me, because regardless of whether it was good or bad, like I was making the best of it, but it
Mm-hmm.
sometimes felt like they were minimizing my pain. And
Yes.
and
Yeah.
I know they were just trying to be kind and loving. They wanted me to feel like life is going your way. See, the universe has your back. And I just wasn't ready to hear that. And sometimes even now, like I kind of shake a little bit, and I always say, whatever it was, I made the best of it. So I
I
love the
agree
other
with you.
premise. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
No, I totally agree with you, because bad things happen, and it just seems like some people get much heavier doses of that than
yeah,
others. And right, to offer that, so thank you for saying that. I think it's and the distinction you're making between how we use different tools and ideas and concepts for ourselves doesn't mean we're just going to put them on others.
yeah,
Just because something works for us, we have to be really contextual and understand where that person is and our
yeah,
relationship with that person. Just to offer something that we think is helpful
yeah,
may not land that way.
yeah. And what I love about it is that either way we land in the same place. Either way, here we are, and this is the life we have. And so how can we make the best of what's happening? How can we learn the most we can? How could we try again? How could we get up? So I'm a very hopeful person. So I
Hmm.
just found, it lands us all in the same place, right? The
Right.
same consciousness of, in this moment, what's the most that I can get out of it? What's how deep can I go? How much could I elevate?
Hmm.
It's I think it ends up in the same consciousness.
Hmm.
One, though, I do think, like, there are people who feel the best is always happening, and they're very, very elevated consciousness. I think it was Krishnamurti who said, "You know why I'm not unhappy ever? I don't mind what happens to me." Ah,
Hmm.
can you
Right.
imagine?
Oh,
That's
so
the highest
nice. So
consciousness
nice.
of all, right?
Right.
I don't
Right.
mind what happens. We all know that if we don't mind what happens to us, we would always be happy. But so we mind, we have kids, we have mortgages, we have people we love, things we want. And so I always know the less I mind what happens, the happier I'll be. And I,
Hmm.
I probably will never. I wonder if there's anybody out there with kids that the children is able to feel that way. But to me, that's full enlightenment. I don't mind what happens, and I'm still happy. And I know I
Oh,
will not get there in my lifetime, but
yeah.
maybe. And I think maybe for me, as far as I can get, it's like I'm allowing everything to be the way it is, and I'm allowing uncertainty. But at the
Mhm.
same time, I'm recognizing that I do mind certain things,
Mhm.
but I still have to surrender to the unknown.
Yes, I don't mind what happens to me. So, okay, so I love that. That's so
Yeah.
refreshing. I just had an image of a long time ago living in San Francisco with all my close friends post college, starting the adulting process
Yeah.
before cell phones. And what, as someone who is always a thinker and a planner and a worrier, I loved the weekends because I would get into the mindset of when it was going out time or for the day of we're going to all meet at Chrissy Field and then we're just going to see what happens. And it
Mm,
truly was an exercise
yeah,
in letting the day unfold, what we
yeah,
did, who you ran into. It
yeah,
was just I had to get myself in that mindset because of how I'm wired, and it was so freeing. And so what you're
yeah,
making me think of is, gosh, let's practice that,
yeah, as
this
much as
higher
we can.
consciousness, let it just day in and day out. Like, yes, we have a
Yeah,
schedule, but stuff is going to happen. And what if we're just okay with what happens throughout the day?
yeah. The inner world over the outer world, right? All
Hmm.
day long, the outer world's always gonna pull us. It's always gonna take us to the wheel. It's always gonna take us to the spinning, and we choose. And the days that I choose the inner world, the days I mind less are my most joyous days. And I do go
Hmm.
through days. We can go through days of that. And maybe that's okay.
Hmm.
Maybe if that's our life practice of minding less. Well, actually, what's so funny, the less I mind, the more I create. The less I mind, the more joy I have. The less I
Hmm.
mind, the more aligned I am, the more dreams that come forward. So it is an
Right.
interesting practice. It's just I think there are going to be some days where we mind, and then maybe that's where we use the maybe practice. And that's the
Hmm.
days we meditate a little bit more and we do a little more self care. So perhaps it's just you have to kind of take all the different practices
Hmm.
and mind as little as you can.
It's a letting go.
So
It's
letting go.
again, and a letting go, not of giving in and giving up. It's more of a letting go in it's like a faith, trust
Yeah.
in something larger that is unfolding. While honoring something could still really suck at the same time.
Yeah. And that's why I love the maybe because it just reminds me of the hope. Like there's the maybe not, but there's another side of uncertainty that's offering us good things. So for me, when I do the maybe practice, it just reminds me that there's always hope in the unknown, that there's this continuum, this letting go. There are good things too, not just bad things. And I think
Mhm.
that's the thing. You
Mhm.
don't need to know exactly what's going to happen. You don't need to know bad things will never happen. You just need to remember good things happen too. And I think that's what maybe gives us. And I think maybe that gives us the courage and enough hope not to
Mhm.
mind what's happening
Mhm.
in the moment. Perhaps that's the practice.
That's the practice. You've talked a little bit about your own growth in the journey of maybe over the last decade in working with so many leaders, businesses, individuals. Has there been an evolution as our culture and our thinking continue to change with the acceptance or the pushing back? Have you seen any changes over the last decade in the maybe mindset with the work you're doing?
Well, when I work with people one on one, it's much easier, because you're in someone's specific circumstance. So it's
Hmm.
much easier to implement, a maybe mindset. So interesting you asked me that question because as things are becoming more politically uncertain. I think it's always been uncertain, but we'll describe it as politically uncertain and the world and global warming and all these things. There are two types of people. There are certain people who maybe has become a lifesaver for them. So they're able to be activists. They're able to get up every morning. They're able to go to work because they know that there's hope in the unknown. And
Hmm.
then there are a group of people recently who are kind of irritated. They feel like I'm stealing what's happening. I'm minimizing the
Mm,
seriousness of the situation.
yeah.
And so I more and more talk about you could have a present based mindset and still be someone who's trying to make the world a better place. You can believe in the fact that you don't know what's going to happen next, but that good things could happen too. That you could be fearless on the light side, which we kind of talked about
Hmm.
before we got on. There's like,
Yes.
you could be just as fearless in the light and the dark. So my work, I find often like people are trying to say, they're trying to sell me more despair. And
Right.
so the maybe's either saving certain people or irritating certain people because they can't sit in the light. They can't sit in the hope because they see things are bad and they're never going to get better. So there's more embracing of it, and there's a group that just feels like the ship is sinking, and you can't
Mhm.
feel bad enough. It was Wayne Dyer said this. You can't feel sick enough, you can't feel bad enough, you can't feel angry enough to make the world better, but you can feel joyful enough, happy enough, and light enough to make a difference. And so until I know for sure what's going to happen next,
Right.
I'm going to wake up, I'm going to try, I'm going to hope, and I'm going to go for the light, and every day make
Hmm.
the most. So it's interesting. I find that both things are happening, and we all have to choose, right? How we want to experience this moment and the future we
Yes.
want to create. I'm
Yes.
not getting out of bed in the morning without hope. Every marriage, but I don't have to
Right.
be attached to what happens next.
That's the important point,
Yes.
is the attachment to what we think should be,
Yeah.
because we think everything will feel better, it's in our best interest, and it's the attachment. And the Buddhists talk, the attachment causes the pain,
Yeah.
right? The attachment to something, it's and that's back to your talking about with kids, right?
Right.
One of the traps of having children. um you can't not be attached. Maybe there's some enlightened souls that have
Yeah.
an enlightened way, which, like you said, we will probably not get there. I will say I've gotten better over the years with all the decades, but
Right.
to okay, we'll move away from parenting, to detach from an outcome, to still give everything you've got, to care with all
Yeah.
your heart and soul. We're not saying not to do that. We're just saying show up to the best of your ability, given the circumstances, and then what will be will be.
Right. But I need a little hope in there. So for me, I need to know that my efforts maybe will lead to something better.
Hmm.
That's what I need. I'm
Hmm.
okay to say maybe it's hope without attachment. I'm okay to say I don't know what's going to happen. Good things could happen too. But for me to show up, I I have to have hope that it'll make a difference, even if it doesn't. Do you know what
Yes.
I'm saying?
Yes.
So, like, I'm
Totally.
just being
Totally.
honest about it. Like, there are certain people
Yeah.
that they act. A lot of people are out there right now acting, doing things, but they feel the despair in their heart, and
Yeah.
I don't want to live with that suffering, and they don't really know. The funny thing is, they're telling me they know, but you can never know what tomorrow brings. So,
No.
I'd rather act with hope and be okay with however it unfolds than act
Yes.
out of despair and suffer before it happens.
100%.
Yeah.
It's all about hope. I mean, I think that's, and going back to depression, whether people have dealt with it situationally or transiently, and unfortunately for some, where it's a chronic situation, what dwindles is one of the many things that dwindles in a depressed situation is hope.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of the right. It's hope that things are not going to change, that
Yeah.
things are never going to get better, that I'm never going to be able to do this. I'm never going to feel this again. And also, like, what unfortunately happens is the shrinking of the ability to see other alternatives and possibilities, which is where this work is also, is like, so increasing, using maybe
Yeah.
to instill, increase, expand hope, is you can't quantify how important that is.
Yeah. And you just have to have the experience. Like you said, you just had the experience a couple of days ago. You
Yes.
could talk about maybe, and you could say, what's so great about this? And then when you're in that moment of feeling despair, of feeling like you're stuck, the stress is overwhelming, and all of a sudden you realize your fear is not absolute. Life has maybe, there are many ways it could unfold. It could be bad, but it also could be good. The minute you feel that, for you, it's a whatever
Mhm.
you feel,
Right.
it's like everything shifts, and then you realize, okay, I have the energy within me to continue living this life, pursuing my dreams, and I could bear the moment, and I could bear what happens. Often, sometimes when you're thinking about the future, you're trying to work it out, you're not even there yet, right?
Oh,
So so
most of
much
the time.
so much needless suffering when the
Right.
moment is offering us so much more.
Being okay now.
Yes. Being okay now, because right
Being
now,
here
we're
now.
both
Yeah.
sitting here, we are okay, but
Yeah.
our fear that we're not okay is why we look for certainty.
Mhm. Or
That's
fear that
all.
we are not going to be okay, right? Even if we are okay, then
Yes,
we wait, okay, this is too good to be true. I'm okay right now.
but
What it
we
when
won't be.
yeah,
It's our search
yeah,
for okayness, right? And
yeah,
that leads
right.
us to want certainty, and then wanting certainty, we suffer, and then we don't pursue our dreams. That to me is the saddest of them all. The suffering is sad, but to choose a life that doesn't really align with your heart because you
Yeah,
were looking for certainty that didn't exist anyhow,
right, right,
that's, to me, that's
right,
the kicker.
right.
That's the heartbreaking thing, that we look for something that we can't have and we give up who we are for it. To me, that's, so the more you're
Mhm,
in maybe, the more you're willing to explore the
mhm.
the things that are really in your heart, or at least live a more authentic life. That's what I find. Like, the more I'm
Yeah.
in maybe, the more I'm me.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
I really like that.
Yeah.
The more in maybe, the more I'm me.
Yeah.
Um, you also, um, something you said in, one of the things I listened to or read that I wrote down was, "The life you are seeking is also seeking you."
Mm. Mm. Is that incredible? Is that
Yeah.
incredible? Like, I always think to myself, like, why would I have this thing inside me that every day I'm thinking about, every day I'm desiring it? It is connected to something out there in the world, in the
Mhm,
universe. I mean, we're all one, right? It's almost like we think we're separate, but we're not. So there's something in us that's calling out, but it's because something's calling us. I
mhm,
truly believe that with all my heart. And it's the story of our stress and our worry and our fear of the unknown that separates us from all that can be. So, yes, what you are seeking is seeking you. And when you
mhm,
really believe that, it's like there's a vibration outside of you, inside of you, and it's just dancing. And the more you're willing to let go, the more chance it has to fully connect. I
mhm.
don't think it doesn't come from here. It comes from the heart. And
Right,
I'm sure
right.
you know that there are things
Yes.
inside you that you desire so deeply, and it's not even logical, right? It's
Mhm.
like, I was brought up to be an attorney and an accountant, right?
Right,
But
right.
that's not what I seek every day. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, it
Yes,
just
right.
is. It just is. And
Yes,
when you honor that, there's something calling us every day. We just have to be free enough and open enough to
right.
to hear it and to honor it.
To hear it, to honor it, and to heed the call,
And
everyone. I
to
mean,
heed
this
the
is this
call.
heed the call.
What
This
you're seeking is seeking you, for
yes,
sure. Yeah.
we all have these
We all
unlimited
have it.
possibilities and potential, and we are all being driven and guided in some direction. Try to listen to what it is and try to put those societal and familial stories to the best you can aside. Because
Yeah.
as you talk about authenticity, when we can listen within,
Yeah.
we know stuff that wants to make us do stuff and say stuff and be in certain places
Yeah.
and listen. So just
Right.
listen. Yeah.
Absolutely, but you have to be willing to live in the unknown for it, right? Because
Hmm.
what comes through, it's unpredictable. What comes through might not be your current occupation. What comes through might not be your current relationship. So it's almost like we have to believe that what is in us is possible.
Mhm.
And so again, that's why maybe is so important for me, because it makes me see that what in me is possible, because I don't know
Mhm.
what's going to happen next. And if I don't know what's going to happen, that means what I'm feeling is a possibility. And so
Yes.
that's how I always honor my inner world, because I'm like, well, I don't know, it's not possible. Maybe it is. And boom, there I am. I am one step closer to, I'm starting to seek what's seeking me, which means I'm one step closer from everything. So that's
Yes.
how I like to see it.
Thank you for the gift of maybe. Thank
Oh,
you for bringing that to us.
oh, and thank you for having me here today. This was, I guess we'll do it again in 8 years.
I guess, well, maybe we won't have to wait. Maybe we won't have to wait so
Maybe,
long.
maybe we
Yeah.
can cut it in half. Maybe we could do 4 years.
Yeah. Let's do that. Let's do that because you're evolving at a very rapid rate. You are on TEDx stages. You're writing new books. So tell everyone what's going on for you now and where to find everything you're doing.
Um, well, you could find, I have a website, AllisonCarmen.com. My podcast is 10 Minutes to Less Suffering. Lately, I don't know, I just started writing a bunch of articles about women's healthcare. There's always something that is on my mind, and
Yeah,
so
it's calling you. Something's
it's
calling
calling
you.
me. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll write some articles for Salon.
Hmm.
That's what I'll do now. I have a couple of other books that I started working on, but I don't know. I'm really in this fully open place right now. But I have a presence on Instagram, Allison Carmen. Um, at Allison Carmen. Yeah, I'm just open to what's next. I don't know. I don't know. I'm what am I seeking? What's seeking me? I am
Hmm.
I'm open right now. I'm in the maybe. I'm in the maybe.
You're in the maybe. You are modeling the maybe mindset for
Ab-
us in real time. In real time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks. It's great seeing you again.
Oh, thank you so much. It was such a joy to be with you today.
The maybe mindset, everyone. The gift of maybe. Allison's got great stuff. Check out her website, TED Talks, books, articles, and wow, for us all just to get in this place of possibility and openness and go in the direction where we're being called, and to remember that what we are seeking is seeking us. Allison has given us a lot to think about with the maybe mindset. And as you heard, I utilized it myself, and it really helped me see other possibilities. 5 takeaways from today's show. Here they are. Number 1, uncertainty is not the enemy, it's a gateway. When we stop resisting the unknown, we open ourselves to growth, healing, and possibility. Number 2, the power of maybe disrupts the fear loop. By questioning the absolute nature of our fears, we create space for hope. Number 3, maybe isn't just a mindset, it's a life practice. It brings us from the mind to the heart, guiding us towards faith and peace. Number 4, hope without attachment is powerful. We can want and work towards things while remaining open to how they will unfold. And 5, hard things still hurt, and that's okay. But maybe reminds us we don't have to be ready to move on to move forward. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of our community. Please send this to everyone who you feel will benefit. Thank you for your 5-star reviews. They really do make a difference. And as always, I will remind you, we have this moment, this day, and this life. Let's make it a great one. This has been a Peters and Rossi production. Make It a Great One with Dr. Dan is produced by Laura Rossi. Our engineer is Phil Rossi. Theme music is Uplifting Folk by Awesome Music. Artwork by Kelly Dwyer. Follow us on social media at Dr. Dan Peters. For more information, visit drdanpeters.com.